Before we move on to the next session, I would like to give a big shout out to our partners who have partnered with us in various forms at this festival. Desh Bhagat Radios for being our radio partner. Desh Bhagat Radio, ladies and gentlemen, please give them a big round of applause. And Verde for being our gifting partner. Please give them a big round of applause as well. Next up, we have SheEO, Leading with Grit and Grace, an exciting panel about the indomitable spirit of women leading the corporate landscape. The panel, comprising Amrita Tripathi and Lochan Narayanan, are going to be in conversation with Aradhika Sharma. Amrita Tripathi is a multi-hyphenate leader with over 20 years of experience in the media and tech. She's also an author with 3 novels out, including the latest, The Other Sister, which was published in 2024. Lochan Narayanan is a seasoned leadership development professional with nearly 2 decades of experience, having worked with organizations like GE Capital, American Express, and ACT FiberNet. Aradhika Sharma has, along with Captain S. Seshadhari, co-authored Sunita Williams, Astronaut Extraordinaire in 2007. She runs a popular weekly column for the Tribune titled Girls at Gupshup. Among the many feathers in her cap, she has also written Dear Agony Aunt, a non-fictional work inspired by her own experience working on an online Agony Aunt column. Over to you, Aradhika, ma'am.
Thank you. Session called, evocatively called SheEO. I am not very much in agreement with this with the title, but anyway, let's just talk about the SheEOs to the SheEOs. Lochan Narayanan and Amrita Tripathi, both women entrepreneurs and authors working to bring change in the lives of people in diverse ways. So Lochan and Amrita, you've truly can you hear me? Yeah, okay. You've truly embraced the spirit of innovation and courage by stepping away from conventional paths. Lochan, leaving a secure job in an MNC to start an organization, Spinach Learning Solutions, as a transition coach, is a gutsy move. Did you not hesitate before taking this leap?
Okay, thank you, Aradhika, for asking that question. I hesitated a lot. And honestly, I did not step out because I wanted to start something. I stepped out because I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. And I didn't have any other means, mechanism, modes to figure it out. So I remember having this really intense conversation with my husband and saying, is this the right move? And thankfully, he was extremely supportive and he said, go ahead, what's the worst that can happen? It wasn't a sudden decision, it was a very thought-through decision. The decision to step away and figure out for myself. I think that's what was challenging about this, quite honestly.
Okay. And Amrita, your diverse ventures are impressive and show a remarkable ability to adapt and thrive in various fields. Starting from being a news anchor, you are founder-editor of the Health Collective and Tap-In Tribe for Women and Leadership. Did you not fear to step untrodden paths? Because really untrodden paths here.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. One of my friends said I was very brave, and I think it was brave or stupid was my response, because I didn't think through, and I think anyone who set up their own venture, I'm not sure how many of us would do it if you fast forward and we had that 20/20 hindsight. I did think, I think much like Lochan, I feel like I had reached a place where I actually wanted to start something of my own, but I'd also reached a place where I thought I wasn't growing and learning enough. But I've now come to the conclusion that my midlife crisis was Tap-In Tribe. So that's what I'm saying.
Right. And that was at age what age? Sorry for the age question, but let's say which decade of your life were you in?
Well, so the Health Collective is my 30s, which I think is fine. So I won't maybe quarter life crisis. And midlife was Tap-In Tribe, early 40s.
Right. Okay, that's great. And Amrita, throughout your career, I see a trend of interest in health and mental health, right? So please share the genesis of the Health Collective and the advocacy programs you conduct to ensure comprehensive support and understanding. A little bit about the Health Collective to begin with.
Sure, thank you. So I set up the Health Collective. It's been almost a decade now, and I had started out at a national news channel where I, apart from being a news anchor, I was also a health editor at one point. This is way many years ago, and before the pandemic. And what I'd realized was that we didn't get to do too many stories around mental health, and we were hearing from the experts that this was a critical area where the media wasn't playing the role that it should have. We tended to only cover cases when they were sensational and not in the best way. After I left the news channel, I had a plan to set up a platform like the Health Collective, but what immediately triggered me to do it was, in fact, instead of waiting for funding, which again, anyone thinking through, that's the smart thing to do, wait for funding. But I actually saw a tweet from someone I didn't know. Those days, tweets were, it was a gentler ecosystem. Someone had tweeted that, a friend of theirs was in acute distress, and they didn't know who to reach out to. And I saw this 2 days later, and I DM'd them, and again, this is, those things, these were possible back in that era. And I was actually very upset to hear that they hadn't found this very privileged, upper, sort of well-educated, English-speaking Mumbai. And I quickly sent them some helplines, and I realized, those of us who have that kind of access or have the information or have the resources also have a responsibility. So we set up the platform initially to share credible information around mental health from an India lens. Again, the journalism background helped because I had the network. I also realized we didn't have too many Indian case studies. So as a result, again, if you think back pre-pandemic, a lot of the thinking was this is not an India problem. I think before Deepika Padukone really came out, very few people realized that this is something actually that affects every single one of us. All of us have mental health, and most of us know someone who has a mental health condition, judging by the numbers. And I'll just wrap this part up by saying that, very quickly it went from just being a place where we could have expert columns to people reaching out to say, can we share our stories? Yeah. So the first 3 people who shared their stories, I still remember, including one anonymously, they really determined the course of the trajectory the Health Collective would take, because it became a place where you could share your story of lived experience without being judged. It became a community where people felt supported, and we were able to tap into that wider ecosystem and provide a service that, by the time the pandemic came, the sort of publishers noticed, and we got book deals and stuff. And as of today, we have 550 stories, comics, artworks, and columns. Yeah.
So, and then COVID, of course, must have kind of would you like to talk about the COVID experience?
Yeah, sure. I think the same people who probably would have told me earlier that no one's interested in mental health and you're insane, no one wants to read about mental health, when the pandemic came, started saying, oh, that's so interesting that you had this insight. It was very helpful. I think we got the word out. I think the pandemic, unfortunately, impacted so many Indians and folks globally, but it also brought into the mainstream challenges to do with mental health in a way that I think nothing else could have. We were talking about anxiety now in the mainstream media. We were talking to legacy media about how you can have these conversations. And I think for me, it's been really quite a journey to understand that, all of these stories make up our community. And I think understanding that, it's easy to sit at a stage, it's easy to sit and give gyan, but the stigma that we need to fight against, all of that comes from each of us individually, in our own homes, with our friends and family, and none of it actually none of it will have an impact unless we ourselves are aware of how to protect and promote our mental health, and we ourselves are aware of, the information that needs to be shared responsibly. So nowadays, we've got the opposite end of the challenge. When I started out, there weren't enough stories about mental health. Now you can hardly go on Instagram and not find, pop psychology. And I think for influencers, that is the need of the hour, is to just make sure you're spreading responsible information.
Yes, that was actually going to be my comment, that how in the world do you ensure responsible, information is being spread, because a lot of people everybody has gyan, everybody has like little those pop thingies happening for you. Like for example, actually the other thing I want to ask is, so when I go to Canada or when I go abroad, I hear people talking about anxiety like very naturally, as everybody's got anxiety. Okay, do you? Sorry, do you?
No. So I hear you.
Yeah, did you have that experience as well?
I mean,
so yeah, tell me. Yeah.
No. So sorry, I was just going to add to that to say I heard this so much, and recently I was saying I have a few team members. I work with a lot of interns, and this was. Oh, I got a feedback and now I have anxiety was very given and very normal. So I'm not fully sure whether it's how much of it is the right thing, not the right thing, and so on. So I just wanted to pause there.
Yeah, no, that is true, because that does happen in corporates. And so in Canada, like I was saying, so even if you're traveling in a bus, if you're walking down the street, if you just hear some kids talking, so it's very fashionable to be anxious. So, comment.
I think, yeah, that loaded question if I ever heard one. I hear what both of you are saying. I feel like, all of us who are on social media will also see this. We've had older folks come and tell us, kya, in our time did we not have, and we had so much stress. So there are two sides to this. One is, of course, now we all, especially our younger folks, have access to vocabulary. Yeah. I think it's a good thing. I think, yes, it can lead to some very frivolous conversations, and this is where the language itself, and I think language is to blame for this, because you use anxiety, I use depression. The same way, if I feel gray or blue and I'm depressed, I'm having a bad day, the same word is used for someone who has a clinical diagnosis and a disorder where they can't get out of bed. There's a biopsychosocial reason for that. But I do think that, I still think in India we have a long way to go till we're like Canada. I think we have to we have to be more empathetic and understanding, and also understand that it's more about, when you say younger folks, especially the Gen Z, if they're feeling safe enough to share this, just contrast this with 25, 30 years ago, and we were all joining the workforce, where, are you kidding? Especially if you're a woman, you would just be like, no, let me suck it up and I'll go have a meltdown somewhere else, in private.
So apart from education and awareness, is the Health Collective also involved in policy and legislation to advocate changes in laws and policies to improve mental health services and protect the rights of individuals with mental health conditions? And how about crisis intervention?
Oh, these are really good questions. Crisis intervention, no. I also have realized I have the skill set, and I've spoken to psychiatrists about this. For me, it's such a huge area. It's almost like a black hole of, if you want to get involved, there are like 90 things you should get involved in. But I have to keep coming back to what is my, expertise or skill set. And I promised my mother I'd always start these talks by saying, I'm not a therapist. My training is as a journalist and storyteller. So I feel like my job has been to, tell the stories, create the platforms, make the connections. I do get pulled into, just by virtue of doing this for so long, multi-stakeholder groups, including, for example, around suicide prevention. And, work with some psychiatrists on work there that will lend itself to policy. And in fact, very gratifyingly, someone has picked that up as a pilot in Odisha, which is my home state. But I think that it's one of those areas where I would love for us all to be mental health advocates. And I think, you have to have, of course, the legislation, which we have a very good, by all accounts, Mental Health Care Act. The legislation is in place. A lot of really cool people worked on that. We now need to look at implementation, execution, and like I said, how are we in each of our roles potentially having an impact on this? And I say this with all, due respect to everyone in the room, but unfortunately suicide, for example, is one of the leading causes of death for young Indians. It's not a comfortable topic to talk about. How do we have that conversation easier? How do we connect them to the resources they need? How do we not shut down those conversations because we're uncomfortable? And ethically, every time we do this, we have to tell people, if you're feeling distressed, please know that help is available. Please know that helplines are available. And please work within your communities, whether you're in the media, whether you're in policy, whether you're in the army, so many of you are, are here from the armed forces, whether you're in education, so many of you are, leading lights in education, you all have a role to play.
So Lochan, now my question is directed to you. Yeah. So your organization Off Experience focuses on training and development. Could you share more about the unique offerings and support that Off Experience offers to mentees and learners?
So what we do at Off Experiences are support 3 types of transitions. The first is transition into leadership. The second is career transition, so people looking at moving internally or externally for their careers. And the third, which I feel very excited also about, is called life stage transition. And this piece is specifically for women who are navigating different life stage requirements, whether it's motherhood, whether it's elderly care, whether it's being a primary caregiver for different family members. So how do they transition or retain their careers and transition back to work? So these are the 3 spaces where we do a lot of work with organizations. The focus is not just on the skill set, but on the mindset. In fact, there is a lot of statistics that says that about 70% of new leaders actually underperform in the first 2 years of becoming a new leader. And this is not because they don't have the skill. It's purely because they have not yet mentally transitioned to becoming leaders, which means that they have to start thinking beyond just execution. They have to start thinking a little differently. They have to start thinking about the team. They also have to start thinking about how they're building the team, managing the team, etc. Similarly, when we think about careers and career transitions, everybody immediately jumps to the idea of saying, okay, corporate, if not corporate, then entrepreneurship, that's the only option. But even within the corporate space and world, it's evolving very quickly. We know roles are being made redundant, right? So how do I stay relevant? It's not just from a skill set lens. I can go and learn 15 different things. But the fact that I'm not doing so is rooted in something that I need to work with. So a lot of these typical tipping points, as we like to call it, or transition points, is where we come in and we support them. A lot of the work we do are rooted in coaching principles. We support the organization through those fundamental principles. We don't like to do general programs. We try and do a lot more custom workshops, a lot more custom coaching, which is required for people to actually figure out the mindset more. Because once they do that, skills are actually abundant and plenty. Skill is not a challenge anymore. Knowledge availability is not a challenge anymore. So that's the shift that we are trying to make with off experiences.
So typically, how would that work? Like supposing, would I approach you as an individual, or would an organization approach you? How would people reach you?
Yeah. So both happen. Mostly the work we do is with organizations because they are also equally struggling to figure out what do they do with the teams that they have. So that's one big part of the work we do. I also work with individuals as they're navigating at each of these three stages. Okay. So people who are saying, okay, now I need to kind of step up, I need some support, or it's been 12 years, I don't like what I'm doing, how do I move out of this? Or I'm someone who's taken a career break and I'm choosing to come back, how do I navigate that?
So if a person wants to transition from a role, from a job, like say from being an army officer into being a farmer,
right?
And if he comes to you and he says, this is what I want to do, then how would you take him through that?
Okay, interesting journey. Okay, so an army officer to a farmer.
Sitting right there.
And right. So an interesting transition. The first part about figuring out is how are they defining their version of success and their career? And that's the most important piece. So when they think about their career, now that they're, let's say, moving out of whatever they're doing, whether they're in the armed forces or otherwise, how are they thinking of the next 5 years of what their career looks like? Now, farmer could be one of the many options that they think about. Somebody might come back and say, I want to do something with nature, right? Then we start expanding that space. Okay, what does that mean? What do you see yourself doing more of? Where is your family in all of this? Where are you in all of this, right? What kind of financial backing support do you have to take certain kind of decisions or plunge? So we look at all the factors, create a goal, and then we work backwards in creating smaller actionables for the individual to work towards. So that's usually the approach taken for all kinds of transitions that we would like to do. The piece that I do want to talk about is the financial aspect is something that I really emphasize a lot on. Even from, honestly, my experience as well was, from never having to ask for money from anybody. From the day I started working, I didn't ask a rupee from my dad. I never asked anything from my husband. To actually being in a position where I said, no, I need a little financial support, also meant, am I okay to be in that space? So financial requirements is something that we do talk about, that I work with them on, ensuring that they have adequate support and their family is also supportive of the change in lifestyle that's going to happen. So suddenly, you had access to clubs and everything, to now you're in a remote space where there is no club, nothing. It's probably a rooster waking you up in the morning. You may be okay. Is your family okay with it? So we look at it from a holistic lens.
Right. So we'll just go on to the books now, to your writing. So Amrita, you've made significant contributions to both non-fiction and fiction literature. So to start with your non-fiction books, you've authored and co-authored 4 books in the space of mental health. could you share how these books align with and support your advocacy efforts through the Health Collective?
Yes, thank you. Only on a stage like this do you get asked such a lovely question. Thank you for noticing. We were talking about the Health Collective and how I set it up and how initially we didn't think it will have much of an audience. Well, at least some of my close friends were very skeptical we'd have an audience at all. I think around the time we got 300 stories, and I was tracking the site hits, of course, quite obsessively then, as you can imagine. I realized that almost everyone who wanted to reach out and share a story or work with us, whether it was the illustrators, artists, designers, or contributors, it was because they had some connection to this space of mental health or mental illness. And in fact, the numbers bear it out. 1 in 10 Indians is estimated to have a mental health condition at any given time. And as one of the psychiatrists I interviewed told me, that doesn't mean the rest of the 9 of us are in good mental health. So it's getting more and more topical the more and more complicated things are getting. So Simon & Schuster India had an editor, Himanjali Shankar, and Rahul, the CEO. We started having these conversations because they realized, I already had a lot of stories that could be sort of worked into a book form. I, of course, had to pitch them and tell them it should be a 3-book series, and these are the topics we're getting the most questions on. So we did depression first, so 9, and I think this is the first in India, but 9 first-person stories of living with depression. I think only 1 was anonymous in that. Everyone else came up. At the launch, I still remember, it was 120 people, which is unusual at the best of times. And we had people saying, it's incredible to see that, you have an IAS officer, you have an, IRS officer, civil servant, a journalist, a teacher. And till now, the stereotype has often been, you'll only see that silhouette, that woman in the, holding her head in her hands, Rona Dhona. For me, it was like a natural extension is sharing these stories. Of course, we had to edit them. Of course, I co-authored each of these books with a trained expert. So a clinical psychologist, Arpita Anand, was a co-author in the first one. I feel like the ethics of all of this is very important. You have to make sure you're doing no harm. Are you, respectfully sharing a story? Is there sort of a connect to the wider audience? So that was depression. I next knew that we have to do young mental health because there's so many challenges for our young people right now. I co-authored that with Meera Haran Alva from Bangalore, who's got a practice now. She's been working on children and adolescent mental health for many years, almost 20 years. And there, with young people, actually, the ethics are very different because you don't want to be chatting with a 12-year-old who, will become an adult one day and get very worried that they had shared all this. So we decided to talk to adults, like 17, 18-year-olds, with parental consent. We made some anonymized, conversations, but we approached that book very differently. We did a lot of the comics and artwork in that book, which seems to have helped, as I've heard from some of the young folks later. It's been a conversation starter for them at home. So including someone who said that he'd not been able to come out to his family, but he left, a story open, like the sort of chapter open at home, and which is why I think stories are really the heart of what we do. And the final, we did anxiety. These were the common search terms: depression, anxiety. That was with Kamna Chibber. Age of Anxiety. Both Young Mental Health and Age of Anxiety came out during the pandemic, so that was not great for my mental health, but it was important. The timing was, pretty stressful. I'm not sure why I put this ridiculous timeline on myself, but that's a story for my therapist and me another time. And then, honestly, because of this and these books, we've written in a way that's conversational and accessible, because I really feel like the journalism made me realize you can't just keep throwing jargon and stats at people, right? So because of those books, this psychiatrist, Dr. Soumitra Patare, reached out to me for a work on suicide prevention. And that was probably the hardest one of all, because I actually had to confront some, personal stories which I put in the book with my first boss, unfortunately having taken his own life. Again, we had to do that very responsibly. What are the options for people? The 2 psychiatrists wanted to share, the facts, the stats, but also policy. You're talking about policy suggestions. These are things that we can all impact. But I hit a wall after that, and I'm like, I'm taking a break. Don't want to talk about mental health after this. I'm going to just...
Absolutely, because, and then you also must be having you must be having to deal with stress, obviously, when people are in a place where they want to transition, so they're in a place where they don't want to be. So when those kind of stories come to you, how do you handle it? Like, is it not uncomfortable for you to handle it, or the people who are working with you?
So I think the little difference between the work that Amrita is doing and I'm doing is, in my case, I cannot do if the person does not want to take a step. So I can't do anything about it, right? In case of mental health, can I be supportive, create an environment, etc.? Is probably like as a support system, can I do a little more, maybe share stories? So one of the things we started, and in fact, I know we were not going to talk about it, but it's going to come out as a book very soon in the month of May, is we actually, just like what she mentioned about stories, we brought out stories of people who've done career transitions, who have succeeded and failed, both. So we brought out about 100 career transition stories. We did that as a, very simply, we did that as a social media chapters. With their consent, we shared their stories and so on. And we got amazing responses because somebody, someone met somebody who met somebody at an event and said, how do you know of experiences? Right. Because I love their stories and it's given me the confidence to go and talk to somebody and make a shift. So I think the power of stories is something I would really kind of talk about. So that's one of the ways we wanted to get more and more people to say, okay, come and take the first step.
So coming back to you, and this is your fiction that you're writing, that you've written. So your novels, The CBS Knot and The Broken News, are highly contemporary and reflect our current era. So one, can you briefly describe the themes of these books? And tell me if you see yourself as a chronicler of the times.
Oh, I need to steal that. I need to steal that. Yes, I am a chronicler of the times. I will give you credit for that. So, it's really interesting because every time you write fiction, somebody will ask you, is this based on your story? Is this based on your life? And my first novel, Broken News, was sort of this drama set in a newsroom where an anchor is going through a lot of, interesting life experiences. And of course, now looking back at that, I'm not surprised several of my colleagues read it very, very intently to see who I was talking about. Right. I think the more you learn your craft, the less it's directly about your life. But yes, I think when I wrote Broken News, I wanted to talk about the flip side of, the very intense, like adrenaline-charged, sort of 24-hour news cycle, what it was doing to relationships and people. And that dynamic still interests me till today. So the CBS Knot was a little bit of a darker story, but again, coming of age, a group of friends, and how they are in their sort of own world, in this battle and sort of death, drugs, the devil. It's a very sort of twisted journey they go on. But partly, I feel like the themes there are also themes that will resonate with any sort of adolescent coming of age, because I think these are areas we don't talk about. This is actually, I will say, prior to the work I started in mental health, and it was exploring more from the point of view of a chronicler, as you said. What is it about relationships and relationship dynamics that can really make or break you, especially at that very vulnerable age? So I found that a pretty interesting way of looking at it.
So okay. Let me just go to your new book, and then I'm coming to you with your book, right? So your latest book, The Other Sister. Everybody, look at this clap.
Please,
it's a new book, The Other Sister. Yeah,
It's a beautiful cover.
It is beautiful.
Thank you.
This focuses on a social media generation that is hyper connected. I got that from I think from your blurb. That is hyper connected yet isolated and misunderstood. Yeah. Can you comment on this state of being and the ideas that you aim to capture in this book?
Yes.
Firstly, the state of being.
The state of being. Yeah. So this book actually kicks off with a millennial. So she's about sort of 30, early 30s. She's actually just posts on social media that she's going to take a break. And it's kind of like the story just kicks off from there. What do our friends go through? Why do they jump to the worst conclusion? Why does no one really pick up the phone or try and go to our house? Because I was also trying to capture those of us who've been around before social media would remember a time when if you were worried about someone, you would pick up the phone, call them, call their parents, go to their house. Whereas now we'll just tweet or Facebook post or Instagram comment at each other and just hope that things are okay. I feel like the state of being, and this is very much now a post-pandemic novel, I've been working on it for a long time, but I think it just really shows that we can be super connected with all these incredible, the tech, the innovations and the platforms, but be very distant from ourselves and from each other. And I think going forward, with all the disruptions we're seeing with AI, Gen AI, and what's happening with our industries, we're going to need those connections more than ever. So in a way, it's an exploration of that. And the other thing that I'll add to this element is, there was, my brother had told me me this. There's this Japanese three mask or three face theory, which is that we all have a face that we put on for public. So this is a mask we all have when we're with the public. We take that mask off. Only the second mask is when you're with your family or close friends. And that's a second persona that you're projecting. And the third one is the one we usually don't take off for anyone else, which is just ourselves. And that was playing on my mind when I started thinking, but now for most of us, when we're posting on social, we're performing constantly. We are not able to say straightforwardly, I'm having a bad day. Everything has to be amazing or hyped or like this is incredible. And what is that doing to us? Because it's come back now. It's actually now impacting how we see ourselves, not just our friends.
So Lochen, it appears that your book, first book,
Yes.
The Career Heist, which is Seize Control of Your Professional Journey, draws from your experience in guiding individuals to successfully navigate career transitions. Speak a little bit more about your book, please.
So the book has been co-authored along with Gaurav Gandhi and Apurva. Oh yeah, sorry. I'm supposed to hold the book like this? Yes, thank you. So interestingly, Gaurav, Apurva and I come from very different backgrounds. So Gaurav is somebody who's spent 20 plus years in one single organization but has moved around holding different roles within the organization. You could call it like completely different careers. Apurva has never worked in a corporate, and he's like a serial entrepreneur. And I have seen both sides. So it was very interesting when we were writing the book, because when we started talking, we realized that though we have different journeys, our philosophy around how you think about careers was similar. And that's how the book kind of came together. The biggest challenge for us was we were all writing with our own lens, right? That's always a challenge when you're writing with a co-author. We were writing with our own lens. I was talking to a group, he was talking to a group, and so on. But one thing that was common for all of us is that, and I have to admit this, I am not a very big non-fiction reader. I'm a very big fiction reader, and I was telling Amrita in the morning, I have a huge respect for people who can write fiction, because that's one, if I pick a good fiction book, I'm stuck to it. It's following me in the washroom, it's following me while I'm eating, drinking, all of that. With non-fiction, there is a tendency to become very preachy. So one of the things that we at least agreed on, saying that this is not going to be preachy. There is no right or wrong way of doing something. We will only bring forward some frameworks that have helped us, some frameworks that have helped other people, and we want to bring out stories. So we kept it, we would like to believe that we've kept it very practical, and we've kept it very like workbookish, so it's almost like if I were to have a conversation with a coachee of mine, this is how I would do the conversation. So it's literally like a personal coach that you could pick up the book, run through some of the activities that's there in the book. You'll find it, you'll resonate with it, do it. Not every chapter you will resonate with it, which is absolutely okay. But there'll be some pieces that you will say, okay, this resonates with me. And we've heard multiple people coming back saying, this particular framework resonated with this, the value wheel resonated with me, the stories stayed with it. So the intention was there'll be something for everybody to look at, but it has been written with the mid-career professionals in mind. Anybody in the 12 to 18 years of career span, where suddenly you realize, what the hell am I doing with my life? So you can call it quarter life, midlife, whatever life crisis, somewhere in that stage. Yeah. Also because you're going through a life stage transition. You're potentially, let's say, gotten married, maybe you have kids, maybe your parents are growing older. So a lot of things are coming together around that time. So career kind of starts to look or feel a little questionable, saying, okay, is this all? Is there more to it? That's the question that we've been trying to answer more and more, saying, don't sleepwalk through your career. Right. Take charge of it. When we were thinking of the name, honestly, it was inspired by Money Heist, which was the series back then.
I think that was kind of very obvious. Sorry.
We did not anticipate that it's going to take really long time to get the book out for us to talk about it, to use that reference. But we loved the word heist because I think if anybody's watched Ocean's 11, 12, etc., you're always rooting for the robbers, right? But you're rooting for them because they go at it very strategically. They plan, they're meticulous. They have a plan A, they have a plan B, they have a plan C. And that's what we want people to think of their careers, and not just sleepwalk through it saying, okay, engineering done, MBA done, now I've landed in a good job, now everything will get taken care of. It will not happen.
So, can you share a success story, where your guidance has significantly transformed somebody's career or life?
This is one story I love to share this, and this was also because it was early in my coaching career. So this person, she's a HR professional, and she was working in an MNC in Dubai back then, and she came to me saying, I don't know if I should go ahead and do maybe a second HR course, maybe from like a Ivy League college and so on. Can you help me? And she didn't come to me saying, I need a coach. She just said, can you talk to me? So I spoke to her, I understood what she was looking at, and we set a very clear career goal for her. She came back saying, okay, my career goal is that I want to be in a multi-geographical HR space where I lead HR teams of different geographies, and I want to work in a new age tech company. And she wasn't working in a new age. She was working in a very traditional multinational. We said, okay, great. So what does this mean? She said, okay, this has given me clarity that I'm going to now move from Dubai to Europe. Okay. And we said, okay, how are you going to do that? And then we broke down each step. So she first said, okay, which countries are open? So that's a conversation she and I had to say, okay, what countries, where can we look at options and so on. She started creating her ideal workplace list in one of the conversations, saying, my workplace should have these things, my role should have these things. She came back with a list of companies saying, these are 10 companies that make sense for me, and I'm going to write to them. She took 6 months, she wrote to each of them individually on LinkedIn, found out the people, spoke to them, set up her own interviews, and reached. The reason I talk about this story so much is not about what I did. And and I never met her, by the way. It was all virtual. This happened during the pandemic. I met her just 6 months ago when I was in Germany. The reason I always say is this because it's not about what I will do to you. If you're expecting somebody to come and give you like one, what do you call that? Like a syrup or a ready answer or like one concoction, chances are you will only go that much ahead and stop again. But in her case, all she needed from a coach was clarity. And that's what she got. She was able to dust around the cobwebs, she had the answers. And then she put in the hard work. So the hard work still has to happen. It's just that when you work with somebody, it just helps you cut the clutter, because there's so much noise, especially since you said social media, there's so much noise everywhere. What do I be? What can I be? What should I do? What is my brand and all of those? So it just helps cut the clutter.
So, of course, were there like instances that were less favorable, where there was a complete flop?
Yeah, I worked with a very senior guy in a large e-commerce company sitting in the US. And because, I have to say this, because he had paid me advance for the 8 sessions, I could not say no. But after 2 sessions, I realized that this is not what he needs. And he's really not willing to kind of break through what he's thinking and how he's thinking. And that's where we said, okay, we have to kind of cut this conversation short. And we
Oh, she's here. Okay, fine. So she's here.
I hate to do
No,
this,
it's fine.
but
It's fine. It is very.
yeah,
It's all right.
because
Actually,
the
we almost.
wheels of time are cruel, so we have to keep to the time
Anyway,
limits. What to do?
Thank you very much. Thank you for interrupting us, and thank you, ladies. Fantastic
Thank you for an amazing,
session.
amazing conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Radhika. And thank you, Amrita.
Thank you so much, Amrita Tripathi, Lochan Narayan, and Aradhika Sharma ji.